So maybe we all know this verse. I pay homage to the Gautama who taught out of his compassion the sacred Dharma to rid us of all distorted views. And then next is the salutation to the mother of all the Buddhas, the Prajnaparamita, which is ineffable, inconceivable, inexpressible, and which is the domain of self-aware wisdom.
Oh, yeah.
And then the mantra of Heart Sutra, Tat Yatha Gati Gati Paragati Parasangati Bodhi Swaha. So for the past many years, mainly for these Tibetan students, youth, we have set this time of the year for because the students from other schools, from other places also could attend this. And so teaching, and therefore the main disciple or the recipients of this teaching are those of the school children. And then we also have this time here a group of Thai Buddhists, monastics and others. And so Buddha, after becoming enlightened over 2,500 years ago, after his enlightenment, he first gave the sermon on the Four Noble Truths, which teach the Four Noble Truths and their 16 characteristics, which are the fundamentals to the teaching of the Buddha. And then, with regard to the perfection of wisdom teachings, discourses, the Buddha taught it in the Girtakuti, the vulture peak. And so the Four Noble Truths was given and taught in Varanasi. And so we have the Theravada followers of the Theravada tradition, and I respect you because you are the senior students of the Buddha. So with regard to the monastic discipline, the practice of monastic discipline, there are different orders of Vinaya. And so the Theravada tradition follow Vinaya in the Pali language, whereas in Tibet, we follow the Pratimoksha, which is in basically in Sanskrit. So it's mainly contained in the Sanskrit. So there are a few differences in numbers of certain misdeeds, I mean the infractions and so forth. So with regard to the misdeeds, what are called misdeeds, there are 5 sets of infractions. So in Pali there are 70 or 75 something. With regard to the minor misdeeds, so the difference is only minor between the Vinaya that is followed in the Theravada tradition, in Pali tradition, and in that of the Sanskrit. For example, in Pali tradition, the Theravada tradition, you mention only one precept about how to wear the robes, monks' robes. And it says that you should wear it properly. Whereas in this Mulasarvastivada tradition that we follow, the Vinaya says that there are 7 aspects in which it should be worn. Not too low, going below the ankle, not too high, going above the knee, and so forth. And so with regards to the Vinaya, the monastic discipline and others, these are foundation to, and we share, the Theravada and the Sanskrit tradition share in these. whereas the Prajnaparamita, the perfection wisdom teachings, are separate. And so I really appreciate the Thai monks and the Thai followers of the Theravada tradition who have come here, especially for this teaching. So there has been very little contact between us, the followers of the Pali and Sanskrit traditions. So I've been urging that we should strengthen this, increase the contact between us. So we are actually doing something. In the 60s, I actually sent some Tibetan monks to Thailand, and they stayed in a monastery in Thailand. And they also took the Theravada monastic vows as well. And so there were 4 or 5 of them. But we could not continue sending monks to Thailand after that. And so I met some Thai people recently. And so they were talking about having 3 monks over here, and also sending Tibetan 3 Tibetan monks to Thailand, so that they could actually, in order to strengthen our contact bond, they could learn the languages first of each other. And then here there are people from many different countries, other countries. So there are people from, for example, regarding China, it is traditionally a Buddhist country, and particularly following the Nalanda tradition, as I said before. And then Vietnam, Korea, Japan, they also follow the Sanskrit tradition, which spread from China into these countries, and then the Buddhism that has spread in Tibet. So we all follow the same Sanskrit tradition, and also the Mongoloids, such as Mongolia, people in Mongolia, and then the 3 republics in the Russian Federation. So we follow the same tradition, the Sanskrit Nalanda tradition. So these are the traditionally Buddhist followers of Buddhism. So since the means of communication has actually become very prevalent these days, there had been a new growing interest in Buddhism. And so people who were not traditionally Buddhists do come to these kind of teachings. And so for you, though you were not traditionally Buddhists, you had no contact with Buddhism in the past, but you take interest in the teaching of the Buddha. And particularly, it is important for you to see that Buddhist philosophy is quite different from others religious traditions. So there are many different religious traditions, such as in India, the homegrown religions like Sankhya and so forth, Jainism, and then Buddhism also. And then in the Middle East, the major world religions such as Christianity, Judaism, and Islam developed. in in the Middle East. And all these religions teach the message of altruism. All of them teach love and compassion. So, though the religions teach this, whereas the followers themselves make division amongst the different religious followers, saying, "This is my religion, our religion, and that's their religion," and so forth. And so all religions essentially teach the same message of love and compassion. So, of course, there are maybe primitive religions which, like shamanism, worshipping nature, spirits, and so forth, whereas these major religious traditions of the world teach love, compassion, tolerance, forgiveness, self-discipline, and contentment. These are shared messages of all the major religious traditions. So, in other words, all these religious traditions have helped humanity for thousands of years now. And today also they are benefiting millions of beings, and they will benefit people in the future as well. And therefore, saying my religion and our religion and their religion and causing division, there's no need to do that. So we should respect in order to develop harmony amongst the religious traditions, whereas we should make a distinction between respect and faith. We should respect all religious traditions, whereas with regard to faith, you keep faith in your own religion. It is therefore important with respect to have harmony amongst religions. Is it possible to have this? Of course, yes. If you look at India is an example of the religious harmony. All the major religious traditions coexist harmoniously in India. So in this huge nation of India, if it is possible that religious tradition is, could be practiced in religious harmony, it could be practiced in this land, then it is possible. It should be possible for the rest of the world to follow this example. So I say that with respect to the teaching of love, compassion, and so forth, all religions teach that. Therefore, we have reason to respect all religious traditions. Whereas in philosophical field, we can divide the religions into theistic, those religions believing in a creator God, and those that do not. So in India, for example, we have the non-theistic religions, such as non-theistic Sankhya school, Jainism, and Buddhism, according to which there is no beginning of life. Though there is no beginning to life, there is this assertion of an independent soul in the other religious traditions. So Sankhyas and Jainism and Buddhism do not assert the beginning or do not assert creator God as such. Whereas other religious traditions do believe and assert that of creator God. So in India, the non-theistic Sankhya's, Jainism and Buddhism are the ones that do not believe in a creator God, whereas apart from Buddhism, the other two do assert that of an independent self, whereas or soul or Atman theory, whereas Buddhism does not. It is said that there is no self apart from the the psychophysical aggregates. On the basis of the psychophysical aggregates, a person or a being is designated according to Buddhism. Therefore, there is no independent self as such. So within Buddhism, there are these different philosophical traditions, the schools. Some assert selflessness of persons or personal selflessness, whereas they do not assert that of selflessness of phenomena. So of course we naturally or instinctively have this sense of an I am this, I am that. So because of this, holding on to this kind of view that there is some kind of an independent or a permanent and so the philosophical schools of Buddhism teach that not only it is the case that the self which is permanent, single and autonomous does exist, which is the view of non-Buddhist schools, and also what they assert is that there is no self which is like a ruler over the psychophysical aggregates. And so they assert that of selflessness in the sense of the lack of or absence of an substantially existent, self-sufficiently existent self. So whereas the Chittamatras and Madhyamakas do assert on top of selflessness of persons, the selflessness of phenomena as well. So when they use the logic to actually demonstrate or prove that of selflessness of phenomena, they use different logics. Whereas in the case of Chittamatras, they actually use logic to prove that there is no externality to anything. External phenomena does not exist. So which is quite similar to what quantum physicists say these days. So quantum physicists say that there's nothing objectively existing. And so although things do appear to have some external existence, they do not have that existence, external existence. And the reasoning that the Chittamatras give is because the object and the subjective awareness which perceives it are seen simultaneously arising. Therefore, there is no external object. The object and the subjective perception are not different, essentially. And so what the Chittamatras use to reject the externality of things is quite similar to the quantum physicists' idea of saying there's no objective existence. And so for the Chittamatras, the existence, form, and so forth are because of they are the reflections of the perception which perceive them. And therefore, they talk about non-duality of subject and object. So they have really given serious thoughts to say this. And then, within the Madhyamaka philosophy, there are Madhyamaka followers who, on the one hand, assert what the Chittamatras assert, that there is no externality to phenomena, whereas they also assert that there is no true existence in things as well. So they are the Madhyamakas who assert the objective existence, objective or the self-characterized phenomena. So they really, these philosophical schools have given serious thoughts to the nature of things. Whereas the ultimate view of the emptiness is what is explained by Master Nagarjuna. So Master Nagarjuna's tradition has no internal contradiction whatsoever. So what is the purpose of these philosophical ideas? Are they to confuse people or what? That's not the case. Because the reason is because of our grasping at some independent self. I mean, it actually creates that exaggerated view, which gives rise to negative emotions, these destructive emotions, which in turn cause suffering to us. So, in order to get rid of this grasping at the self, independent self, I mean, this philosophical view of emptiness is taught. So, some scientists even say that the mind, which actually sees that there is some kind of appearance of things as if they have some independent existence. So some scientists even say that, the quantum physicists say that if you are fully convinced that there is no objective existence in things, then that helps to actually reduce your reaction towards things and seeing things in complete black and white. And Master Nagarjuna says, by elimination, through the elimination of karma and delusions, there is liberation. And karma and delusion arise through conceptual constructs, and these in turn are rooted in this grasping at true existence. And this is ended by that of the wisdom of emptiness. So the view of emptiness is to reduce this grasping at some kind of a solidity in things. So because we have this clinging to some kind of solidity in things, then there is the grasping, and then you have attachment to it. And when you have attachment, that also, when you find some kind of obstacle that is being caused to what you are attached to, then you grow angry. So in today's world, people abuse other people and deceive others, and also kill other human beings. So in our childhood, we don't have this desire to kill others. And there's no sense of discrimination, saying my side and other's side and so forth. So some scientists, even, they're not talking in religious terms, but they, through their experiment and research, they say that the basic human nature is compassionate. So in one of our scientific meetings, one of the scientists actually said that the basic human nature is compassionate, and the evidence for this they gave is that if you have a child, a pre-verbal a child, a few months old, so these infants have not yet developed language, so very young infants, so they showed some animations in which they showed that in the animation some children affectionately helping one another, and that animation was shown to the infant child, And the infant child actually showed joy in seeing one child helping another in the animation. So this child, this infant, was very happy. And then the second animation showed that there were two children who were actually harming one another. For example, it actually showed one child pushing a ball uphill. So in the first animation, when the child was having some difficulty pushing the ball uphill, another child comes and helps push the ball uphill, and they were successful. And then the infant was very happy. The reaction from the infant was happiness, joy. Whereas the second animation shows that this first child, while trying to push the ball uphill and having difficulty, another child comes from the opposite side and actually pushes it down on him. And when that was shown to the infant child, this pre-verbal child, the child was actually, the reaction from the child was negative. And so, even at that age, pre-language, the infant reacted in two different ways to these two animations. One showing joy and happiness, in the other showing a negative attitude or expression. And so this shows, according to the science, that the basic human nature is compassionate. And so if you are compassionate, altruistic, then you will be peaceful, relaxed, and because of that, you'll have more friends. Whereas if you are suspicious, doubtful of others, and so forth, then if you remain like that, you won't have friends, and in the end, you'll be left alone. You will be lonely. And so this is also this case with the dogs and cats. So some dogs, when they see other dogs around them, I mean, the hair on their body, on their back, stands on end. Whereas dogs, which are very friendly with other dogs, live very peacefully. So as long as we are social animals, if you are more friendly with the others whom you rely on, you are dependent on, you are happier. And if you remain alone and lonely, you are unhappy. This is very clear from our experience. And then the medical scientists also say that if you are constantly angry and anxious, fearful, and so forth, it actually harms your immune system. It weakens your immune system. So they say this. Whereas if you are compassionate and if you are relaxed, then the immune system also is not weakened. Therefore, the basic human nature is compassionate, which is very precious. And then the important thing is to educate people, because we have this marvelous intelligence, this brain, whereas the sensorial perceptions regarding smell, sight, sound, and so forth, other animals, like a rabbit, may have more acute auditory perception than us. So with regard to the sensory perceptions, the animals may have more acute senses than us. Whereas we as human beings have this ability to think more critically, to investigate into the nature of things and so forth. So our brain is better at that than the animals. And then human beings also developed a language, and then the religious traditions also developed because of human beings using our intelligence. So what is important for us is to use this intelligence in order to advance or strengthen our basic human nature, that is compassion. So therefore, everywhere in the world, education is considered very important. So everyone is actually paying attention to educate people. Whereas the so-called modern education, the existing modern education is more directed towards material development. But why are we facing so many difficulties and problems in the world today? Although we talk about peace, I mean, it's not achieved because we use this marvelous human mind or intelligence merely for material development and not use it to promote this compassionate nature. So the basic human quality of love and compassion, which is very alive and fresh in our childhood, becomes dormant as we grow up and go through school systems. And therefore, I say that, and many educationists, also educators and educationists, also say that the current existing school system, educational system, is not adequate. So what we need to do is the education should be used to promote the basic human positive quality of love and compassion. So we have the facility or the condition for that. And so for the Tibetan students, and thanks to the past Tibetan Dharma emperors, the Nalanda monastic university tradition of Buddhism was established in Tibet, and Master Shandarakshita, the great master abbot, was a great scholar himself, and also you can actually witness his scholarship through his writings of Madhyamaka text as well as text on logic and epistemology. So he introduced the Buddhism, the Nalanda tradition in Tibet, and Master Padmasambhava mainly took the responsibility to overcome the obstacles, the resistance to the spread of Buddhism in Tibet. And then the Master Shandarakshita took the main responsibility to translate the texts from Sanskrit into Tibetan, and the Tibetan language was not that rich, but the new words were coined. As the new words were coined while the translations were undertaken, you can actually see in the translations, Tibetan translations of the Indian texts, that there is mention of the translator and the so Master Jnanadeva, so Bandapatzik and Jnanadeva, the Indian master, and the Tibetan translator Bandapatzik translated this book, the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, and then later it was also translated by Shakyalotu. So in the colophon it says, this concludes the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, composed by Shantideva and so forth, and it was translated from the Sanskrit into Tibetan and edited and settled upon by the Kashmiri edition, from a Kashmiri edition by the Indian scholar Sarva Yadeva and the editor translator Mang Pelcek. And then later it was translated, also retranslated and settled upon by the Indian scholar Dharma Shri Bhadra and the editor translator Mang Rinchen Sangpo and Shagya Lotu, and finalized by Loden Sherab in the end, with the help of Sumati Kirti. And so, some of the students debated, and when we debate, we use a certain style of language where we say it follows that, and also because it is so, and so forth. So these patterns of debating were actually come from the Indian Nalanda masters' texts, like Dhammakirti's text on logic, and so forth. And then Indian other Tibetan masters like the master Sakya Pandita and also Chapa Chöje, the Kadam masters at Chapa Chöje may be credited with the debating procedure that we use in Tibet. And so, because of using logic in proving and establishing the teaching of the Buddha, without actually relying only on scriptural quotations, which we follow in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, so which actually follows the statement of the Buddha himself, who says, "O monks and scholars, just as the gold is tested by rubbing, cutting, and burning, likewise you should examine my teaching and then accept it, not because you have faith or devotion to me." So he says that to his followers that they should actually check his teaching, investigate and experiment the teaching. And when you are able to verify the truth of his teaching, then the students should accept the teaching. And therefore, the masters of India, like of Nalanda tradition, like Nagarjuna and his disciples, have said that certain teachings of the Buddha, which actually do not stand to the test of reason, cannot be taken literally. Whereas there are certain teachings, like those sutras which teach the three, what are known as the three swabhava, three natures, could actually be contradicted by reason if you take them literally. And therefore, within the same teaching of the same teacher, and although there are certain teachings like the Prajnaparamita, if you actually take them literally, there's no logical contradiction in it. Whereas other teachings, if you take them literally, you would actually face logical contradictions. So what this shows is that the emphasis is on reason, and therefore on the basis of reasoning you make the distinction between the provisional teachings, which cannot be taken literally and on the face value of the teachings, whereas you could also have certain teachings which are definitive, that can be taken on face value of the teachings. such as the examples of the Panchaparamita teachings, and then for the second one, there's those of the Sandhi Nirmochana Sutras. And so Nalanda masters have actually made this kind of distinction between the definitive and the provisional teachings through reason. And therefore in Tibet, when we actually explain the philosophical views, we are able to do that thoroughly because of having studied the philosophy through reason, and lots of critical analysis have gone into these teachings, these philosophical views. And so these are thanks to Master Shandarakshita, the great abbot, and his main disciple Kamalashila. And so today, if you have to actually explain the philosophical views of Buddhism, there's no better language than Tibetan. In Tibet, in China proper also, when Chinese are growing in interest to study Buddhism and Buddhist philosophy more and more, they even take interest in learning Tibetan language. And so, because of the hard work that was done by our ancestors, today we have this tradition of Buddhism which can be explained through reason thoroughly and precisely. And so we have to feel proud of it and be able to keep this tradition. So I do respect all religious traditions, of course, whereas other religions are not able to sit together with scientists and have discussions thoroughly, whereas our monks, are able to do that, to have thorough discussions with scientists. So we can also learn, there's mutual benefit. We learn a lot from the scientists, the explanations and descriptions, and we can also contribute to the scientific knowledge from our tradition. So this is just a general introductory talk. So I have asked the organizers that we could have the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life as a basis for teaching this time. And when you have some time, you should actually read this book. And when you become unhappy, restless, and disturbed, you should read this 6th chapter, which is the chapter on patience. It'll help to calm you down. So the main cause of our disturbance of mind is because of our self-cherishing attitude, thinking I, me. And so in order to counter that self-cherishing attitude, you should read that 8th chapter, which is the chapter on meditation, but which teaches that of the Bodhisattva in the by means of equaling and exchanging self and others. And then I also have decided to give teaching on the precious lamb by Master Kono Lama Tenzin Gyaltsen, the Kinori Negi Master Tenzin Gyaltsen Rinpoche, from whom I received a teaching on the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life. So he was a great master who was following the ecumenical tradition, non-sectarianism. And so in 1967, I received, when I saw Rinpoche's book, this Praise of Bodhicitta, the jewel, precious jewel, so I felt really inspired. And then I decided to receive teaching on his book, and then also teaching on the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life. And Rinpoche told me that if I could give teachings on more teachings on the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, it would be very beneficial to people. So I always keep my copy of Bodhisattva Charya Avatara next to me. So it's really helpful and beneficial to me. So mainly we're going to go through this book, Bodhisattva Charyavatara. And then also I will go through the jewel lamp. So if you wish to get the book, you may find it in the market, The Jewel Lamp, A Praise of Bodhicitta, translated by Gareth Sparham, Dr. Gareth Sparham. So perhaps if I could cover 20 pages a day of the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, I may be able to finish this book in these 3 days. English. So Kundalama Rinpoche Tenzin Gelsen, the Kinori Negi master, had told me that this Shantideva wrote this book, A Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, in the 8th century, and since then there has never been a greater text for practice of bodhicitta than this, and there will never be, he said. So whatever you do, it's important to have pure motivation, the correct motivation. So earlier, earlier you recited this verse, which says, as long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, may I too abide to dispel the misery of the transmigrators. So the essence of practicing bodhicitta, the bodhicitta is to, the practice of Buddhism is to remain in samsara as long as there are suffering beings to whom one could serve, So if you look at the world today, we don't have to actually quote lines from Bodhisattva Charyavatara or anything. I mean, the situation is so unfortunate that people are causing trouble and harm to others because of creating division between us and they, us and them. And this is because of the fact that people are lost in the sensorial experiences of the sensorial stimuli and not really thinking through what causes happiness, what brings about happiness to us, what causes us suffering. So people are ignorant, and because of being disturbed by our negative emotions, the afflictive emotions like those of desirous clinging and hatred. And so to counter the negative emotions, such as attachment, hatred, and so forth, we need, which are rooted in a self-cherishing attitude, we need to counter it with that of the holding others more dearer to than oneself. And to counter this grasping at some kind of independent existence and things, you should counter it. You should develop the wisdom realizing this emptiness. And so these practices really help transform us. So you can see that these negative emotions and the wrong, distorted views are the ones which cause us lots of problems. So we are all human beings, same in terms of physical, mental, and emotional. So once I was in Soweto in South Africa, so it's already 10 o'clock. Do we have some tea? So we'll have a short break here. If you need to go to the loo, please do so. And then come back and take your tea. So we'll have 10-minute break. No. No. This one. You can hear. So those who have questions, please come forward and ask your questions. Okay. It's oh. Huh?
This lady was briefly my classmate. It's quite something.
So her question is? So the Bodhisattva Charyavatara teaches very extensively the practices of both the skillful means and wisdom. So how do we, since it's really broad, how do we put it into practice? So in order to practice, so with regard to the followers, this juga. Did you?
We speak of two different kinds of practitioners, those who rely heavily on reasoning and those who merely rely on faith, as has been explained in explicit explanation of the meaning by Haribhadra. Likewise, we have to follow the same. So if you follow reasoning, then what happens is you generate conviction, and finally you will reach a stage when everything that you come across will be conducive to your practice, because your approach is something which is based on reasoning and not mere faith. However, when it's only related to the practice of doing a religious practice merely based on faith, this is something not unique to Buddhism. This is something every other religious tradition does. And so there isn't any unique quality in it if it's practiced by Buddhists. So what we have to do is follow the practice as is the tradition of those who are intellectually inclined. So in the 9th chapter, Shantideva says all these different paths the Buddha has taught them for the benefit of wisdom. Therefore, make all efforts to generate wisdom. Again, Nagarjuna says the Buddha has taught two different kinds of truths, the conventional and ultimate. So likewise, in the supplication that I've written, by understanding the basic nature of things, the two truths as the foundation, so when we speak of the ultimate nature, we are speaking of them being dependently originated, and because of being dependently originated, they are devoid of any intrinsic nature. So based on this understanding, if you could establish the notion of the Four Noble Truths, then it will be really fruitful. So this is something that you could take. By understanding the two natures of the two truths, you will know, you come to understand how to abandon the two former two truths and embrace the second two truths. So it's important that you should follow the tradition of those who are intellectually inclined based on reasoning. So I have been emphasizing the need on reliance, heavy reliance on reasoning. And if we could do this, then the Buddha Dhamma could survive for very long. Otherwise, if you merely follow faith, then you will have lots of doubts. So if we follow this tradition of relying on heavy reasoning, then Buddha Dhamma would survive for several hundreds of years again. Otherwise, I'm not sure if our practice of relying on practice of conducting our religious practice, if it's merely based on faith, then I'm not very sure how long Buddhism will survive in this modern world. So then others will also come to see that we are only observing what has been traditionally practiced. So it isn't anything particularly unique about merely following faith. And then we speak of the truth of cessation. And the fact that the truth of cessation could be established is ultimately entirely dependent on the understanding of emptiness. Because so how strong negative emotions like attachment and anger might be, all of them are based on ignorance, which is a distortion of reality. So it's very important to have a sound understanding of emptiness, by which then you could generate a sound understanding of what truth of cessation of the delusions would entail, or what would mean. So once, if your approach is reason-based, then the conviction within you is something very concrete. So if you judged the youngsters, it's very important for you to understand, know the nature of the Four Noble Truths. And for that, you need a sound understanding of the two truths. Second question. Your Holiness, you speak of ethics which is based on religious teachings, and another which is not based on religious teachings. So how can you practice something which is ethics not based on religious traditions? So His Holiness answers, there are more than 7 billion human beings, about 1 billion or more than 1 billion doesn't believe in a religious tradition, and they don't. You can't blame them, because there are lots of exploitations happening in the name of happening around the world in the name of religion. So due to different difficult experiences that people have experienced over centuries, there's a reason why many are fed up of religious tradition. But then it is also true that these people definitely need, they also want happiness and do not desire sufferings. So now we need reasoning. So somebody earlier told me that now it's money that really rules the world, and in a way it's almost true in some way, as if the whole thing that we do, the whole kind of modern practice seem to be oriented towards material facilities. However, the fact still remains that even if you have enough material facilities, if you do not know how to manage your mind or emotions properly, you will not lead a very happy life. For example, I have friends like a chancellor who has kind of a command over several thousands of students, but that chancellor although materially speaking he is well off, always remains in some kind of disturbed state of mind. So this shows that there is something lacking despite having all the material facilities. So if we were to introduce ethics based on religion, then certain people would not be attracted to this concept. So it's important to have an approach which is not associated with religious tradition, but still they need the practice of compassion and discipline and so forth. So the secular that I have pioneered, at the secular ethics that I have pioneered, is something very important. But this does not mean disrespect to religious tradition as it's understood in some part of the world. My understanding of secular ethics is dependent on the Indian understanding, which apart from maintaining respect for all religious traditions, goes far beyond the religious boundary and embraces practice which is somehow kind of impartial. So this is my approach of secular ethics. His question relates to the terminologies of new Tibetan terms which were not there in the past. So, for example, terms with respect to economy, modern science. So there are translations in Tibet and also some other translations here in exile. So what would be a good consensus for us to converge on these terms? And His Holiness says it is for the scholars to decide. We have more than 6 million Tibetans. And if you look at our language, although we have different accents or dialect, local dialects or so forth, but basically, fundamentally, we have the same script. So even if we have the same language, if these are read, people have different accents in reading them, but we still have the same script, the language. And the Tibetan language, which encompasses as a foundation, which is the foundation on which the sutras and shastras are all based. This is not just unique to Tibetan, but this is something which is widespread in the Himalayan regions as well, even in Bhutan. So it's for the scholars to come to some kind of consensus. I have heard new terminologies have been introduced in Tibet. Those are very good. That's very good, but it's important that the translators could come together and meet and discuss. So personally, I can't really recommend something concrete at this point. My question is, my experience of compassion and love comes from is associated with my parents. And my mother recently died. It has been almost like 28 years. So, Your Holiness, would you please pray for my mother? Of course, definitely. So I have this kind of overwhelming grief is something not only I have undergone, but this is something universal. So in the face of such tragic loss, what would be a beneficial kind of attitude or a practice that we can assume in such kind of a tragic experience. So as far as suffering is concerned, there are different levels. Suffering of misery or suffering, suffering change, and pervasive composite suffering. And there are other sufferings where sufferings of failures, not being able to get promotion, so forth. So these are something that we can practically solve through our own efforts. But there are also people who have all the material facilities with lots of money, but still do not have sufficient mental peace. So although they have these material facilities, despite that, the fact that they lack peace of mind is because what they are engaging is only the suffering of change. And what they are indulging in is only with the suffering of change. So, and the third one, so long as you are under compulsion of negative emotions and karma, you can't really eliminate this entirely. So this elimination comes with the attainment of truth of cessation. So this is something which is going to take a lot of time. But somehow through our mind training, we can reduce the impact of the sufferings upon us through proper mind training when it relates to the suffering of change and suffering of suffering. And then we have to look at the nature of samsara, how prosperous a samsaric experience might be. If you have an understanding how the nature of samsara is, and then it's not something so shocking, so long as you have an understanding that while you're in samsara, this is bound to happen at some point. So of course it's, although what we have for our loved one is from worldly sense, love, it's something associated with attachment. So now, what we really need to train is train on some kind of love which is not associated with attachment. So it is expounded in the 6th chapter of Bodhisattva Chariot. In that text it says, your enemy is the one who really gives you an opportunity to practice patience. Therefore, there is enough reason to practice love towards your enemy. So if you somehow are able to extend your love and compassion for those who, even instead of being friendly, harm you, then this kind of practice of compassion is something which is not associated with attachment. And this is what we have to struggle. So this will be covered in the teaching later. Thank you, Your Holiness. So tea needs to be served inside. Is asking. Some haven't received tea. With this supplication, may bodhicitta be generated in those who have not generated, and may it expand in those who have already generated it, and may they never degenerate. So now what's your question? His Holiness asking. My question is, in the Tibetan medical tradition, we have 4 tantras. So is that something which comes under Buddhism? Because there are some kind of practices there taught in that text, which I feel may not be consistent with Buddhism. So is that, are those 4 tantras of Tibetan medical tradition, sources of Tibetan medical tradition, knowledge, so do they fall within Buddhism? His Holiness. For me to answer this properly, first I have to study it. And I'm sorry to say I personally have not much of knowledge about Tibetan medicine. So, whatever the case is, although it's a medical tradition, most of the scholars who wrote those extensive texts on Tibetan medicine are Buddhist scholars. And again, and there are like texts by Nagarjuna, which specifically talks about kind of different ways of treating patients and so forth. And even if somehow the text teaches about kind of a basic discipline in ordinary mundane way of life, this is something which may not be inconsistent with Dharma, because these really, even if they are not like higher practice of Dharma, they still are related to bringing about happiness in our daily lives. So when you have his question, there are three different kinds of dependent origination. Tibetan origination based on causes and conditions, Tibetan origination based on paths, and Tibetan origination based on mental designation. Well, scientists have, as far as from a quantum physics point of view is concerned, scientists found that things do not exist objectively. However, in Abhidhamma-koshakarika, we speak of different kinds of, different levels of particles. So somehow there's a confusion in it, because if I were to speak of the tiniest particles, such as a particle of water, heat, and so forth, this is quite confusing, because on one side I have this scientific knowledge, on one side Abhidhamma-koshakarika speaks of subtle particles which seem to exist. So, Your Holiness, I'm sure you have covered both of these things. So, have you ever come across discussions that touches these topics? Yeah, where there is a contention between both scholars, Buddhist scholars, and scientists. So, His Holiness answers. The way of approach in finding something may be different. For example, if I were to search for something, if I were to search myself, my garment, and then I can come to pick up this handkerchief. So when we speak of critically searching things, for example, as has been emphasized in Prasangika, so if things are critically, as in Madhyamika Avatara, or engaging in the middle, Chandrika says, if we were to search for external objects and after coming to this end that they do not exist objectively, then the means by which they could only exist would be through mental imputation, from subjective imputation. However, usually when we on a conventional level, when we search for something, most of us get carried away by this notion or by this understanding that things could most probably would have some kind of objective existence. So without the analysis on the ultimate nature, what we are searching here is we are trying to search for a kind of a conventional subtle object. So the mode of searching for the final kind of object are different. One is from a conventional position, without addressing the ultimate nature. We do our investigation and finding which is the subtlest particle or not. But on the other side, the Madhyamika approach is trying to find out the ultimate nature within the object of label. Then again, the subjective mind, we can speak of different levels of subject mind. A grosser level of mind when we're at the awakened state, when we're in deep sleep, and all the different levels of mind during the dissolution processes when we die, or at death. For example, when we die, all the brain becomes dead. And then we have also examples of people staying in clear light meditation at death. So this is a clear indication of the presence of the subtlest mind. So recently we have had some practitioners who died and still physically remained fresh despite being clinically dead. So we have some kind of a project to investigate such practitioners. So several years have passed, and scientists take a keen interest in this project. So what this indicates is that there are different levels of subtleties of mind. But if you critically analyze on the ultimate nature, then even the subjective mind is something which is something unfindable. So therefore, Madhyamika Avatara says, as there is no alternative since objects or label or since conventional entities do not exist from their own side, even if the subjective mind doesn't exist from own side, then it's based on worldly convention convention which establishes their existence. So the existence by mode of existence from the side of the object, if it's negated, it somehow inadvertently implies that the existence from conventional designation is established. So Madhyamika says, although objectively things do not exist from their own side, that doesn't mean external objects do not exist, because we can still posit or postulate the existence of external objects by means of conventional designation or conventional establishment. As far as cosmology is concerned, although we do not have particular terms addressing Big Bang and so forth, but we also speak of like space particle, the subtlest particle. And this space particle has neither beginning nor end with respect to its continuation. So this subtlest particle has neither beginning, space particle, nor end. So that's what we call it. That is what I'm referring to. What I'm referring to is the space particle, the subtlest particle. And if it gets grosser, then we can speak of atoms. And then from then onwards, after atom and so forth, when it gets grosser, then we have energy, and then heat is produced. And then after heat, liquid is formed, and then we have solid. So dissolution, when dissolution occurs, it's through the reversal order until you reach the subtlest particle of space. So this is something related to the external object, but when we refer to ourselves within, as our body is something dependent on the four elements, we can speak of the elements as well as the derivatives of elements such as smell, taste, and so forth. So when the dissolution occurs, the earth dissolves into water, and finally, through this sequence of dissolution, finally, the consciousness dissolves into space. So in this respect of space, in this context, space refers to different different levels of emptiness. For example, we are speaking of the emptiness as experienced during red radiance. And finally, the clear light experience, the emptiness being experienced by the clear light, subjective clear light mind. So everything that exists arises from the subtlest clear light, and finally they dissolve back into the subtlest clear light. Well, so when we speak of the highest yoga practice, we are actually applying this subtlest clear light mind in our practice, and the understanding of highest yoga tantra is something which is based on the understanding of this dissolution and arising process. So we speak of 4 levels of emptiness, and once we reach the 4th level, the subtlest subjective mind is the clear light mind, and this is combined with the ultimate objective clear light or emptiness, as has been taught in the second turning wheel or Prajapati Sutras. So subtlest clear light has been expounded in Sutra Alamkara and also tantric text. So we combined the second turning of wheel, the teachings of second turning of wheel, as well as the subjective mind as expounded in third turning wheel. And this combination is something which is which forms the basis of the practice of the combination of the union of the sorry, I didn't get that, sorry. So this forms the basis of practice of Mahamudra and Dzogchen and so forth. So when we speak of subtlest entity, when it comes, when we are referring to external objects, we're speaking of the subtlest space particle. But when it comes to internal thing, we're speaking of speaking in terms of the subtlest clear light. So for more than 30 years, we have been having interactions. I have been having interactions with scientists in the field of cosmology. Although we have some basic explanation, we learn got great deal from the scientists. And then when it comes to neurobiology, although we have from our medical texts some explanation of biology, and also from highest yoga tantra, where there's an explanation of the different channels or chakras, and as also the energies and so forth. So this is something we, from outside, we can present to them. And then the quantum physics, as explained in Buddhism, is very rich and very extensive. And then psychology. When it comes to psychology, basically they only rely on the sensorial minds, the senses, and they do not address the mental consciousness. And also other religious traditions do not speak of the mental consciousness. It's only with respect to the 5 senses that their approaches are more kind of focused. However, India has a tradition of where there is a combination, the practice of combining calm abiding and the superior insight or shamatha or wisdom. So this only relates to the mental consciousness, the 6th mind. So from the Prajapati Sutra point of view, the union of vipassana and shamatha and the union of subtlest clear light with the emptiness as taught in Tantra, these are something which are related. to the Buddhist psychology, and particularly the Indian tradition. And comparatively, the Western psychology is very limited, and the understanding of psychology is also very kind of at a kind of a beginning stage. Then also now scientists have seen that through the training of mind, especially training on calm abiding and so forth, there is a possibility of the mind impacting the brains. So apart from brain, now there are somehow they seem to be accepting a different entity called mind, something distinct from the brain. Recently, I received an invitation to participate in the Kumbh Mela, a Hindu festival of. So earlier, I came across some Hindu practitioners, Sun Buddhist practitioners who spend their time in solitude, nakedly meditating in the Himalayan mountains. So I was thinking of having some kind of conversation with them. We also have some Buddhist practitioners who would practice the Tumu heat, and they would drench first a kind of a shawl in water, and then put it on their body and change it almost like 4 or 5 times, so 10 times, and all the clothes would be completely dried through the practice of Tumu. However, if your practice is not something which encompasses all of the different aspects of the path, then this is something partial, which is common to the non-Buddhist practice. And so this isn't something unique and not sufficient. So although I couldn't be naked like them and meditate like them, I thought a discussion would be fruitful. However, this did not materialize.
So today's world is full of killing, anger, and so forth. So it's a very unfortunate situation that we are in. So how do we practice compassion that is taught in Buddhism, which could to counter this situation? So with regard to compassion, in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara also it is said that if you meditate on compassion, cultivate compassion, you become unhappy, more and more unhappy. So what you need to understand is the disturbance that happens in our mind is because of our disturbing emotions, such as self-cherishing attitude, and also that of grasping at some true independent existence in things. So because of our clinging attachment and also hatred, it disturbs our peace of mind. And therefore, the more compassionate and altruistic you are, it'll help you to counter this disturbance of mind. And so, in order to counter it, you cannot just make prayers to God or whatever, and whereas you should cultivate compassion, love, and affection towards others to counter this. So His Holiness is wondering, if the students in the front row have had their tea. He didn't see them drinking tea. So I will read from the beginning of the text. As I said earlier, have a correct motivation on the part of the disciples, the audience, and also on the part of myself, the teacher, I will also have the correct motivation. So what that means is that you should think along these lines, as long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, may I too abide to dispel the miseries of the transmigrators. So with this altruistic attitude, you should listen to the teaching. In the Indian language, it is called the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. In the Tibetan, Chanjusen Jebala Jukpa, and translated as the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life in English. And then the first verse, respectfully I bow to the Sugatas, who are the sovereign over the Dharmakaya, as well as the noble sons, and to all who are worthy of veneration. And here I shall explain how to engage in the vows of the Buddha's children, the meaning of which I have condensed in accordance with the scriptures. And with regard to Buddhism, the Buddhists are those who take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And so, Chandrakirti says, those who aspire to liberation take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So you should understand what the Dharma is in order to understand the teaching, what the Buddha and the Sangha refer to. And there is nothing here that has not been explained before, and I have no skill in the art of rhetoric, therefore, lacking any intention to benefit others, I write this in order to acquaint it to my mind. So by the third line in the second verse, Master Shantideva is saying is that I don't expect to benefit many sentient beings with this book, but I write it in order to acquaint my mind to it. For due to acquaintance with what is wholesome, the force of my faith may for a short while increase because of these words. If, however, these words are seen by others equally in fortune to myself, it may be meaningful for them. Leisure and enjoyment are very hard to find, and since they accomplish what is meaningful for humanity. If I do not take advantage of them now, how will a perfect opportunity come about again? And just as a flash of lightning on a dark, cloudy night, for instance, brightly illuminate all, likewise, in this world, through the might of Buddha, wholesome thought rarely and briefly appears. And so the Buddhas were sentient beings, ordinary sentient beings like us, for example, in the beginning. And through engaging in the path, cultivating the path themselves, they became enlightened. And those who are on the path also have reached their attainments through the practice of the path. And so with regard to bodhicitta, it is complemented by the wish to help others, serve others, and with compassion. And so, one of the commentaries on Abhisamaya Alamkara, which was written by either Vimuktisena or somebody, in his commentary, it says, with compassion, the bodhisattvas or the practitioners look at focus their mind on sentient beings, and with that of the wisdom, they focus their mind on the omniscience, the Buddhahood. And so with regard to the term Changchup for enlightenment, Bodhi in Sanskrit, Chang has the meaning of purifying, negativities, and chupa in the sense of being fully knowledgeable of everything. And so with wisdom, the Bodhisattvas focus their mind on enlightenment. So with the help of this wisdom, your compassion will increase infinitely. And so, for the sake of all other sentient beings, you focus or you intend to become a Buddha for the benefit of them. All the Buddhas who have contemplated, verse number 7, all the Buddhas who have contemplated for eons have seen it to be beneficial. So, referring to bodhicitta. For it is limitless mass. By it, the limitless masses of beings will quickly attain the supreme state of bliss. Those who wish to destroy the many sorrows of their conditioned existence, those who wish all beings to experience a multitude of joys, and those who wish to experience much happiness should never forsake the awakening mind, this bodhicitta. So you restrain harming others by holding them dear to yourself. Not that if you cause harm to them, it'll harm me. So that is more narrow-minded thinking. And so this is how the basic vehicle trainees actually restrained themselves from harming others. And so, whereas when you actually think along the line that it is because they are dear to me that I should not harm others, it's much more powerful and deep, profound. So your higher rebirth is also related to holding others dear to yourself, and also that of the omniscient state of Buddhahood also is thanks to bodhicitta. And so on a daily basis you'll be healthy physically and also you have peace of mind. And so the altruism really helps you to think of others and have draw these benefits for yourself as well. Whereas the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, they focus on their own fulfillment of their own goals and not really thinking of others, to benefiting others as such. Whereas if you are altruistic, if you have altruism, this altruistic attitude, you only think of benefiting others. So in at the end of the 3rd chapter of this book, it says, "Today, in the presence of all the protectors, I invite the world to be my guests at the festival of the Sugatahood and the temporary happiness, a delightful happiness. May gods and demigods and all be joyful." So verse number 8 and then verse number 9. The moment an awakening mind arises in those fettered and weak in the jail of cyclic existence, they will be named a child of Sugatas and will be revered by both humans and gods of the world. It is like the supreme gold-making elixir, for it transforms the unclean body we have taken into the priceless jewel of Buddha form. Therefore, firmly seize this awakening mind. And then the next verse also, since the limitless mind and so forth. So even when you recite a single 6-syllable mantra and also give a morsel of food to animals like dogs and so forth, and also if you create certain good karmas for longevity and so forth, those positive, wholesome actions that you actually engage in will have their, no sooner their fruits are enjoyed, and that's the end of those wholesome actions. And if you create wholesome actions for higher rebirth, and once you gain that higher rebirth in the next life, that's the end of the result of that action. Whereas if you actually dedicate your wholesome actions for the benefit of all sentient beings across the expanse of space, these infinite sentient beings. So until the end of space, that wholesome action will not run out of its fruits. So all other virtues are like plantain trees, for after bearing fruit, they simply perish. Yet the perennial tree of awakening mind unceasingly bears fruit, and therefore flourishing without end. And then like on verse number 13, and then the next verse number 14, and verse number 15 was the one that was used earlier in the presentation of the debate. The first debate that was presented. In brief, the awakening mind should be understood to be of two types: the mind that aspires to awaken and the mind that ventures to do so. So from the time when one takes Bodhisattva vows, pledging to engage in the Bodhisattva practices, from then on, it says, there's going to be infinite benefit of fruits. Although verse number 17 says, although great fruits occur in cyclic existence from the mind that aspires to awakening, an uninterrupted flow of merit does not ensue, as it does with venturing mind. And for those who have perfectly seized this mind with the thought never to turn away from totally liberating the infinite forms of life, from their time hence, even while asleep and unconcerned, a force of merit equal to the sky will perpetually ensue. So all sentient beings work for overcoming their suffering and gaining happiness, isn't it? While despite their efforts, they still cause themselves suffering. Why? Because they actually are passionate about indulging in the causes of suffering. So, if you want happiness, you need to need to help others, benefit others. Whereas, if you want to overcome suffering, you need to avoid harming others. So although wishing to be rid of misery, the verse number 28 says, they run towards misery itself. Although wishing to have happiness like an enemy, they ignorantly destroy it. Verse number 29, for those who are deprived of happiness and burdened with many sorrows, it satisfies them with all joys, dispels all suffering, and clears away confusion. Where is there a comparable virtue? Where is there even such a friend? Where is there merit similar to this? If whoever repays a kind deed is worthy of some praise, then what need to mention the bodhisattvas who do good without it being asked for of them? And the final verse of this chapter, I bow to the body of those in whom the sacred precious mind of bodhicitta, who thinks of benefiting others, and I seek refuge in that source of joy who brings to happiness even those who bring harm. So even those who are actually harming you because of your bodhicitta, and they become related to you in a positive way through your attitude, So that's the first chapter, which is the chapter on the benefit of the awakening mind. And then the next chapter, in order to seize that precious mind, I offer now to the Tathagatas, to the sacred Dharma, the stainless jewel, and to the disciples of Buddha, the oceans of excellence, whatever flowers and fruits there are, and whatever kinds of medicine, whether jewels exist in this world, and whatever clean, refreshing waters, likewise gem-encrusted mountains, forest groves, quiet and joyful places, heavenly trees bedecked with flowers, and trees with fruit-laden branches, fragrances of celestial realms, incense, wishing tree and jewel trees, uncultivated harvests, and all ornaments that are worthy of being offered, lakes and pools adorned with lotus and beautiful cry of wild geese, everything unowned within the limitless spheres of space. Creating these things in my mind, I offer them to the supreme beings, the Buddhas, as well as their children. O compassionate one, think kindly of me and accept these offerings of mine. Having no merit, I am destitute. And so in making offering to the Buddhas and so forth, you make offering of your body in their service. So when you say offering your body, it means you are offering it for in their service. And I have no other gifts to offer. O protector, you who think of helping others, by your power accept these for my sake. So you should actually think of whatever you do with your body, speech, and mind, they are for the benefit of all sentient beings. Eternally shall I offer all my bodies to the conquerors and their children. Please accept me, you supreme heroes. Respectfully, shall I be your subject. So you should think that you are someone who are at the disposal of sentient beings for their use. The sentient beings who are as infinite as the expanse of space. So this is a very powerful thought. I beseech the Tathagatas and their children to come and bathe their bodies from many jeweled vases filled with water, scented and enticing, to the accompaniment of music and song. Let me dry their bodies, and so forth. Verse number 16, verse number 17. I offer them jeweled lamps, arranged on golden lotus buds. Upon land sprinkled with scented water, I scatter delicate flower petals. To those who have the nature of compassion, I offer palaces resounding with melodious hymns, exquisitely illuminated by hanging pearls and gems that adorn the infinities of space. Eternally shall I offer to all the Buddhas jeweled umbrellas with golden handles and exquisite ornaments embellished with to the rims, standing erect, the shapes beautiful to behold, and in addition, may a mass of offerings resounding with sweet and pleasing music, like clouds that appease the misery of all, each remaining for as long as necessary. And may a continuous rain of flowers and precious gems descend upon the reliquaries and statues and upon all the jewels of Dharma, in the same way as Manjughosha and others have made offerings to the conquerors. Similarly, do I bestow gifts upon the Tathagatas, the protectors, their children, and to all. I glorify the oceans of excellence with limitless verses of harmonious praise. May these clouds of gentle eulogy constantly ascend to their presence. With bodies as numerous as all the atoms within the universe, I prostrate to all the Buddhas of the three times and the Dharma and supreme community. Likewise, I prostrate to all reliquaries, reliquaries to the basis of the awakening minds, to all learned abbots and masters, and to all. And so in the part which deals with confession, it teaches that of impermanence. So throughout beginning cyclic existence in this life and others, unknowingly I've committed transgression and I ordered them to be done by others. Overwhelmed by the deception of ignorance, I rejoiced in what was done. But now seeing these mistakes from my heart, I confess them to the Buddhas. Whatever harmful acts of body, speech, and mind I have done in a disturbed mental state towards the three jewels of refuge, my parents, my spiritual masters, and others, and all the grave wrongs done by me, so thoroughly vile and polluted with an abundance of faults, I openly declare to the guides of the world. But I may well perish before all my transgressions have been purified. So please protect me in such a way as will swiftly and surely free me from them. The untrustworthy Lord of Death waits not for things to be done or undone. Whether I'm sick or healthy, this fleeting lifespan is unstable. Leaving all, I must depart alone. Yet through not having understood this, I committed various kinds of wrongdoing for the sake of my friends and foes. My foes will become nothing. My friends will become nothing. I too will become nothing. I likewise, all will become nothing. Just like the dream experience, whatever things I enjoy will become a memory. Whatever has passed will not be seen again. Even within this brief life, many friends and foes have passed, but whatever unbearable wrongdoing I committed for them remains ahead of me. Thereby, through not having realized that I shall suddenly vanish, I committed so much wrong out of ignorance, lust, and hate. Remaining neither day nor night, life is always slipping by and never getting any longer. Why would death not come to one like me while I'm lying in bed, although surrounded by my friends and relatives? The feeling of life being severed will be experienced by me alone. When seized by the messengers of death, what benefit will friends and relatives afford? My merit alone shall protect me then. But upon that I have never relied. O protector, I, so unconcerned, unaware of such terror as this, accumulated a great deal of negative actions for the sake of this transient life. Petrified is the person today, being led to the torture chamber with a dry mouth and dreadful sunken eyes. His entire appearance is transfigured. Whatever need to mention, and so forth. So that's the end of the second chapter. His Holiness finished. And chapter 3, gladly do I rejoice in the virtues that relieves the misery of all those in unfortunate states and that gives happiness to the suffering. I rejoice in that gathering of virtue that is the cause for our heart's awakening. I rejoice in the definite freedom of embodied creatures from the miseries of cyclic existence. I rejoice in the awakening of Buddhas and also in the spiritual levels of their children. So with regard to the dedication, it's very nice. May I be doctor, the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world. Verse number 8 in chapter 3. Until everyone is healed, may a rain of food and drink descend to clear away the pains of thirst and hunger. And during the aeon of famine, may I myself change into food and drink. May I become an inexhaustible treasure for those who are poor and destitute. May I turn into all things they could need and be placed close beside them. Without any sense of loss, I shall give up my body and enjoyments as well as my virtues of the three times for the sake of benefiting others. By giving up, all sorrow is transcended, and my mind will realize the sorrowless state. It is best that I now give everything to all sentient beings. I am in the same way as I shall at death. So if in those, verse number 16, who encounter me are faithful or angry, a thought arises, may that eternally become the source for fulfilling all their wishes. So, with regard to the actual generation of Bodhicitta, so today in the presence of all protectors, I invite all the world's guests and so forth. Verse number 23, just as the previous Sugatas gave birth to awakening mind, and just as they successively dwelt in the Bodhisattva practices, likewise for the sake of all that lives do I give birth to the awakening mind, and likewise I shall too successively follow the practices. So these two verses, 23 and 24, show that of generation of Bodhicitta, and in order to further increase it from now on, those with discernment who have lucidly seized an awakening mind this way should highly praise it in the following manner. Today my life has borne fruit, and so forth. So when you dedicate yourself for the benefit of all sentient beings, you find satisfaction that you have been worthy of having lived a life like this. And then there's praise of bodhicitta. There's whatever. So it says, "Today my life has borne fruit," and so forth. It was number 26 and 27. And then, just like a blind man, a blind person discovering a jewel in a heap of rubbish, likewise by some coincidence, an awakened mind has been born within me. It is the supreme ambrosia that overcomes the sovereignty of death. It is an inexhaustible treasure that eliminates all poverty in the world. So because you are dedicated to work for the benefit of all sentient beings, as it was quoted earlier at the end of chapter number 3, so because of your cherishing others over yourself, you would actually dedicate your body, speech, and mind for the benefit of others. And even if there may be some spirits and so forth that are supposed to be, snatching away your lifespan and or harming your body and so forth, I mean, you could actually say, if you, whatever you like, take it, and take flesh if you want flesh, take whatever you want. And when I was giving some teaching in Ladakh, I actually felt that instead of really trying to, drive them away, these evil spirits or so-called evil spirits, I thought that you could actually tell them, take the lifespan, my lifespan, however you like, and so forth. So, chapter 3 finished. Chapter 4, having firmly seized the awakening mind in this way, conquerors' children must never waver. Always should they exert themselves to never stray from their practice. In the case of reckless actions or of deeds not well considered, although a promise may have been made, it is fit to reconsider what I should do them, or whether I should do them or not. But how can I ever withdraw from what has been examined by the great wisdom of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and even many times by me myself? If, having made such a promise, I do not put it into action, then by deceiving every living being, what kind of rebirth shall I take? if it has been taught by the Buddha that those who do not give away the smallest thing which they once intended to give will take rebirth as a hungry ghost, then if I should receive all sentient beings after having sincerely invited them to the unsurpassable bliss, shall I take a happy rebirth? So if we had been able to really leave a positive connection with the Buddha, we would be better off than where we are now, and we have not been able to achieve that. And if even during the times of masters like Nagarjuna and Shantideva and so forth, we had created those kind of positive connections with them and have been able to practice the Dharma well, we would be much better off than the way we are now. Then if only the omniscient can discern the manner of the action of those who give up the awakening mind but be freed, it is beyond the scope of ordinary thought. This, for a Bodhisattva, is the heaviest of downfalls, for should it ever happen, the welfare of all will be weakened. And should others for even a single moment hinder or obstruct their wholesome deeds by weakening the welfare of all, there will be no end to the rebirth in lower states. For if my being is impaired by destroying the joy of even one creature, then what need is there to mention destroying the joy of creatures vast as space? Thus, those who have the force of awakening mind as well as the force of falling from it stay revolving within cyclic existence and for the long time are hindered from reaching the Bodhisattva levels. Therefore, just as I've promised, I shall respectfully accord my actions. If from now on I make no effort, I shall descend to the lower states. And so with these destructive emotions like attachment and hatred and so forth, you make yourself unhappy and others also unhappy. So the text goes through the faults or the disadvantages of these destructive emotions. So although the negative emotions do not have limbs like hands and feet and so forth, they do reside within me and cause me harm as they like, as they desire. Although enemies, verse number 28 says, although enemies such as hatred and craving have neither the arms and legs and so forth, and for while they dwell within my mind, at their pleasure they cause me harm, yet I patiently endure them without any anger. But this is an inappropriate and shameful time for patience. Should even all the gods and demigods rise up against me as my enemies, they could not lead nor place me in the roaring fires and deepest hells. Yet the mighty foes, these disturbing emotions, conceptions, in a moment can cast me amidst those flames, which, when met, will cause not even the ashes of the king of mountains to remain. And so it says, all these enemies incapable of remaining for such a long time as can by disturbing emotions. The enduring enemy has neither beginning nor end. If I agreeably honor and entrust myself to others, they will bring me benefit and happiness. But I entrust myself to these disturbing emotions, and in future they will bring only misery and harm. While in cyclic existence, how can I joyful can be joyful and unafraid. If in my heart I readily prepare a place for this incessant enemy of long duration, the soul calls for the increase of all these harm that harms me. So these are mentioning the faults of these negative emotions, and how shall I ever have happiness if in a net of attachment within my mind there dwell the guardians of the prison of cyclic existence. Their disturbing conceptions that become my butchers and tormentors in hell. Therefore, as long as this enemy is not slain with certainty before my eyes, I shall never give up exerting myself towards that end. Having become angry at someone who causes only slight and short-lived harm, self-important people will not sleep until their enemies overcome. So verse number 43, and to do this will be my sole obsession. And so you make determination to fight these negative, disturbing emotions. And holding a grudge, I shall meet them in battle. Yet disturbing conceptions such as these destroy disturbing conceptions, and for the time being are not to be abandoned. So it would be better for me to be burned, to have my head cut off and to be killed, rather than ever bowing down to those ever-present disturbing emotions. And common enemies, when expelled from one country, simply retire and settle down in another. Though when their strength is recovered, they then return. However, the way this enemy, my disturbing conceptions, is not similar to this in this respect. Diluted, disturbing emotions, when forsaken by the eye of wisdom and dispelled from my mind, where will you go? Where will you dwell in order to be able to endure me again? Weak-minded, I have been reduced to making no effort. If these disturbing conceptions do not exist within the objects, the sense organs between the two, or elsewhere and so forth, and end of the 4th chapter. Chapter 4 is about conscientiousness. So you will determine that that you will not let yourself be taken astray by the negative emotions, and do whatever is wholesome. And so on a daily basis, you should make the pledge that you will be a good person, that you will try to become a good person, and therefore to do this is not right, to do that is not right. And so when you do when you are about to cause some harmful actions, harming others, you should be mindful of yourself, and also have this vigilant alertness. With those two, you should restrain yourself, harming others and creating negative karma. So unless you pay attention to with mindfulness and conscientiousness, you will not be able to avoid doing the negative actions. And next is girding alertness. Those who wish to guard their practice should very attentively guard their minds, for those who do not guard their minds will be unable to guard their practice. In this world, unsubdued and crazed elephants are incapable of causing such harms as the miseries of the deepest hell, which can be caused by the unleashed elephant of my mind. However, if the elephant of my mind is firmly bound on all sides by the rope of mindfulness, all fears will cease to exist, and all virtues will come into my hand. Tigers, lions, elephants, bears, snakes, and all forms of enemies, the guardians of all of the hell worlds, evil spirits and cannibals, will all be bound by binding my mind alone, and will all be subdued by subduing my mind alone. The perfect teacher himself has shown that in this way all fears as well as all boundless miseries originate from mind, and so the wrong things that we do actually ensue from our own unsubdued mind, unruly mind, and the good things that we achieve also come from our mind, who intentionally created all the weapons of those in hell, who created the burning iron ground, from where did all the women in hell ensue. The Mighty One has said that all things are the workings of negative mind. Hence, within the three world spheres, there is nothing to fear other than my mind. So with regard to the secret of mind, it refers to the emptiness of the mind. What So first you should know what are right and wrong things, and then show mindfulness to your practice. And while you are engaging in your practice, you should also watch from the side of your mind with this guarding alertness, whether you are doing something wrong or not, whether you are actually being mindful of what you should do and or what you should avoid. So the last year when I went to the Arunachal Pradesh, one BJP Indian political party, BJP leader, accompanied me from Guwahati, and so I had a good time with him, and we became friends. And so one morning he came to see me and asked if how well I rested the previous night. And I said to him, I sleep 9 hours and then get up in the morning, early morning, and I do meditation for 5-6 hours. And therefore, then I do analysis of the nature of mind and so forth, and in order to sharpen my mind so that I could cheat others. And then this political leader told me that he could only sleep 6 hours, and therefore he cannot cheat others. So without this mind guarding alertness or vigilance, you're not able to guard your mind. And so even though people may be learned, it says, because of lacking this girding alertness or vigilance, they also the wrongdoing, they indulge in wrongdoings. So mindfulness and introspection are very important. For example, for the monks, the bhikshus should always think and reflect on themselves that they are monks, that I am a bhikshu and should not do this and that. And so through that, you will be able to avoid the wrongdoings going against your vows and precepts. So what are the requisites or the conducive conditions for the alertness and mindfulness to grow are those of relying on one's, accompanying one's masters and so forth. So when you are mindful, I mean, you will be able to also develop this introspection. So so when you walk or go to some place, you should be mindful whether something harmful is, whether you are at some risk or not. Do look to the right and left, and also when there's no harm, you should place your gaze downwards and so forth, is mentioned. So you should actually bound the elephant mind so that your mind does not go astray. So even though you may be able to focus your mind on a single pointed on an object, you should still check whether dullness also falls in your mind or not, which are like obstacles to developing single-pointed concentration. So when you want to go somewhere or talk about something, you should always be mindful and show introspection. So now the text goes through when just as I'm about to act, I see that my mind is tainted by defilement. At that such a time, I should remain unmovable like a piece of wood, and so forth. Whenever there is attachment in my mind, verse number 48, and so forth. And whenever there is a desire to be angry, I should not do anything, nor say anything, but remain like a piece of wood. Whenever I have distracted thoughts, the wish to verbally belittle others, feelings of self-importance or self-satisfaction, when I have the intention to describe the faults of others, pretensions and thought to deceive others, whenever I am eager to praise or have the desire to blame others, whenever and so forth. So the person and his or her body are different. When you say my body, you as the owner and you as the person are, as the owner and the body are different. So why, confused mind, do you not hold only a clean wooden form, and so forth? So verse number 62 says, first of all, mentally separate the layers of skin from the flesh, and then with the scalpel of discrimination, separate the flesh from the skeletal frame, and so forth. And so these are taught to counter the attachment to one's body. And having split open, even the bones, look right down into the marrow while examining this as yourself. Where is this its essence? If, even when searching with such effort, you can apprehend no essence, then why, with so much attachment, are you still guarding this body now? What use is this body to you if its dirty insides are unfit for you to eat, if its blood is not fit to drink, and if its intestine are not fit to be sucked? At second best, it is only fit to be guarded in order to feed the vultures and jackals and so forth. So, His Holiness finished verse number 69. Now, having paid my body its wages, I shall engage it in making my life meaningful. However, if my body is not of no benefit, then I shall not give it anything. So, because of being contaminated, this body, and because of biologically, we also have attachment and anger and so forth. You should counter these attachment and anger and so forth. I should conceive of my body as a boat, a mere support for my coming and going, and in order to benefit all others, transform it into the wish-fulfilling body. And so you should turn yourself as friends of all sentient beings. Should not have any suspicion or doubt. Now, while there's freedom to act, I should always present my smiling face and cease to frown and look angry. I should be a friend and counsel of the world. I should desist from inconsiderately and noisily moving around chairs and so forth, as well as from violently opening doors. I should always be delightful in humility, the stork, the cat, and the thief, and so forth. With respect, I should gratefully accept unsought afterwards that are of benefit, and wisely advise and admonish me. So, to have peace of mind and happiness and joy within yourself, you can't buy it with money, but you need to actually develop it from within your mind. So I should discreetly talk about the good qualities of others and repeat those that others recount. If my own qualities are spoken about, I should just know and be aware that I have them. And so that you feel that you have actually lived a day in a meaningful way. All deeds of others, verse number 77 says, all deeds of others are a source of joy that would be rare even if it could be bought with money. Therefore, I should be happy in finding this joy in the good things that are done by others. So through doing this, I shall suffer no losses in this life, and in future lives shall I find great happiness. And so you feel rejoiced. But the fault of disliking the good qualities will make me unhappy and miserable. And in future lives, I shall find great suffering. So His Holiness just continued after verse 69. When talking, I should speak from my heart on what is relevant, making the meaning of clear and speech pleasing. I should not speak out of desire or hatred, but in gentle tones and in moderation. When beholding someone with my eyes, thinking I shall fully awaken through depending upon this being, I should look at that person with love and an open heart. So verse number 81, finished. Always being motivated by great aspiration or being motivated by remedial forces. If I work in the fields of excellence, benefit and misery, great virtues will come about. So as I said before, when you feel disturbed within your mind, you should read those of the chapter 6 and 8. Ngwa khangla chodo nga ba the dagi gewe zawa di gwen sangbo chuchi rab do ngo war ki bo chen re se wan ki seje gewe chengar kangjin shin yong sun ja chen me long kan ze be de san ting de nyor do cha war su e be me long ge me So these are dedication verses that were recited by His Holiness.